Welcome to Looking Forward, where we explore the intersection of technology, leadership, and the future of work. In today's episode, episode 7, we're excited to introduce Beth Hedger, principal consultant at Ampersand Consulting.
Beth has had a fascinating career journey, and she's here to share her insights on product maturity, the impact of AI, and the essential skills product leaders need today. We'll dive into her experiences, challenges she's overcome, and her pragmatic approach to navigating the rapid changes in technology.
So whether you're a seasoned product leader or an aspiring one, this episode is packed with value.
You've had a fascinating career journey leading up to your role as a principal. What inspired you to take this path, and how have your experiences shaped your approach to product development?
Great question, AJ. I describe my career path like that of a bumblebee. It wasn't a straight path. It went some interesting directions. And I actually started my career in higher education working with college students. And what I've always been fascinated about is how people work together in an organization and do really amazing things. And how does that all come together in a way that it delivers value? So that was a part of my career. And then I realized I wasn't enjoying the 60-hour weeks, and it was getting really tiresome and it was difficult for family life. So I pursued my next interest, which was really around employee development and projects, working with a large aerospace company. You may have heard of it. They fly airplanes, Boeing. And I really was passionate around how can technical people deliver value. And I worked on a lot of training programs that I helped enable and worked with executives so that they could find ways to develop their people and have a good strategy around that. Then I next had a chance to go to Australia, where I had my very first product role, you would say, where I was helping get a very small company ready to do some demos around a robot that was scanning piles in the ocean. So I got to experience product for the very first time, and that was really fascinating, actually. Then I did some other project work. I became an operations manager at a fintech company. And all along this, I've been fascinated about how the idea of strategy and delivering value and enabling people was the magic in the middle, where you got to do neat things and deliver amazing products out in the world. After my time at the fintech, I discovered Ampersand, and really I had an opportunity to do something that I really love, which is delivering great value and being an awesome partner and helping clients solve problems daily and find ways to help enable their people to do their very best work as well. So where I focus really on is what's happening behind the scenes in technology that enables and unlocks all of the amazing magic that a company can deliver. And that's what really gets me energized, is how do you solve those very challenging puzzles behind the scenes in processes and people and technology at those intersections. So I'm a puzzle solver at heart and a people optimist, and I like creating sanity out of chaos.
The word value quite a few times. What does that mean to you, and in your experience, like what are organizations considering value to be?
It depends on the organization, but it goes back to the fundamental reason the organization exists. Like in the case of aerospace, the value is reliable transportation. In the case of a fintech, it is enabling smooth payment systems that happen behind the scenes and don't break when at the very crucial moments they need to happen. It's around value in a learning and development project where it really is enhancing the skills and helping people get better and take on next challenges that then add the value to a company.
I appreciate you said the word optimism in your summary, and I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I was snooping in your recommendation section where you have 8 glowing recommendations. And then I was like playing with the keywords and searching keywords to see how many times certain words come up in your recommendations. Fun game, you should play it. The word positive was very popular. The word leader was extremely popular. I think it was mentioned like 21 times in 8 recommendations. So that's a lot. And it's cool to hear where you get your energy from, because it seems like you are giving it out quite handedly in your career. All right.
Yes.
So your upcoming webinar focuses on developing product organizations by treating them like products. Can you share a bit about what product maturity means to you and why it's so crucial for companies today?
I realize product maturity probably brings up a lot of thoughts for folks like, what is that? What do you mean? And I really think about how well are you preparing your team, your processes, your strategy, and the way you do product to be nimble and able to meet that next disruption. For example, since 2017 to now, if you look at a recent McKinsey study is looking at the state of AI, it truly is an authentic adoption curve. And right now we're in that steep point where everybody is going after that. So I wonder in my mind, how are maybe smaller companies that are not as resource rich, how are they able to position themselves so that they can take advantage of this amazing opportunity to capitalize on how that could just explode their growth? So what state are they in terms of their people talent? Are they ready to do this? Are their processes still in place from how they used to do work where it was more linear and more predictable, and they're not addressing all of this disruption in the market? So for me, product maturity means how well can you respond to that next big thing? And right now we're in the big thing. So if you're struggling, then maybe it's a chance to take a moment, reflect, and do a little bit of self-examination of your team and figure out where could we pull that lever that helps us unlock all this opportunity and really be ready for the next wave that's coming, because AI is going to have another wave, I believe, where it's going to be the Formula One race cars are right now in the race, but now we're waiting on like the drag races to happen next. So that's the place where if you want to be in the drag race, how can you level up?
Given the rapid change in technology and market dynamics, what advice do you have for product leaders trying to stay ahead of trends and adapt their strategies effectively?
I think it's two things. I think they need to be very good partners with their executive team who's very excited about AI, and realizing that product is at the center of the engine between technology and the business, and how can they bring everyone together to have a really great plan. And secondly, I think it's very important that they help their team acquire new skills, become friends with the data scientists in their organization, or perhaps begin to dive into what that looks like for themselves. I think they also have to adjust their thinking around development, that the Agile Manifesto changed things and talked about iteration. I think AI has changed things because now we need iteration around data and how we make sure data is enabling from that foundational space. So they've got to become friends with their data scientists, or find some to add to the team. They've also got to become friends with their executive team so they can help them really turn it into concrete ideas and not just a bright, shiny object exercise.
As someone who helps organizations navigate through digital transformations, what are the biggest challenges companies facing right now when implementing new technology? And how do you guide them through this uncertainty?
Biggest challenges. There's so many. Where do we start? And it really depends on the organization too. But for me, there's three biggies. One is your talent has to be ready, because you're going to accomplish things through your talent and through them adapting to different ways of thinking around building products that involve leveraging technology. They have to become really fabulous at data. So if that's not in their chops, I think that's necessary. I think they got to look at their operating model. If the way they've been doing product is linear, they need to figure out ways to be more parallel and more scrappy and do more experimentation. And then ultimately it's around taking a breath, thinking about what's really important, because you're still trying to figure out how to solve jobs and problems for the business. So you're still using that mindset, and don't let the technology cause you to be a deer in headlights, because you've led through other challenges before in your business. This is just a different opportunity to unlock. And I think it's focusing on the top 2 or 3 most important areas in your group, having a plan, and then realizing there's the next to do after that, and to just keep on that journey and encourage your team and try to also be the shield for all the chaos coming at their product team so that they're the voice of calm and reason for them, because that will rub off on their team. So however they can stand in the fray and they deflect all of the rapid fire requests and things that'll distract them, they're going to have to really up their leadership game too, and just be more brave and more flexible and more nimble.
Great answer. Thank you. For those aspiring to lead product teams, what skills or mindsets do you think are most critical for success in the current tech landscape?
I think your mindset has to be one of flexibility and curiosity. And some skills I think are very necessary is, how are you doing an even better job at leveraging the data that you understand about your product, and where are other places you need to look for signals in your data to make decisions? You also have to be really good at storytelling and tying what your product does to the value that the business is trying to achieve, and keeping it in terms that anybody can understand it. It has to be something that an engineer can understand, that a developer that is doing the work also can make sense out of. It has to be understandable for finance, because if they're going to ensure that you're prioritizing the product innovation or the product enhancements you're leveraging for, then they need to be on board too. I think given the fact that there's this whole new wave of AI technology happening, some of the skill sets need to be going back to the foundations of Agile and what that really means. It's not about having gobs and gobs of ceremonies. It's how can you go through an iteration and get a minimally viable or minimally favorable product to get out there to answer some what's going on. I think they're going to have a lot of skills around leadership and developing their teams through this challenging technology space, because it's going to require product managers to learn some different technology skills and understand large language models and what deep learning means and how that all comes together and how you train those models. They may have to learn how to go train large language models. So that is definitely an area that they need to think about. And then for the more non-technical product managers, they're going to be more the users of some of this technology. So how are they incorporating it into business processes? So do they really understand the ins and outs of business, and how can they do that assessment of need? So they have to be really good at hunting down, where can we apply these new opportunities in our business? It's a lot of the same skills they've been using before. It's just there's more urgency to get better more quickly. There's no time to just sit back and ponder and think, oh, I can do that next year. Next year's now.
Good. So I have a question for you, Beth. I'm just going to take this opportunity to ask you a few things.
Go for it.
You're not obligated to answer in any way, shape, or form, but I would appreciate your authenticity as always. What was your first role at Boeing?
Oh, how fun. The first thing I did, do you want my first contractor job or my first internal job?
I don't know, first gig. Whatever.
My first gig was this thing called a requisition manager. And what that meant was I was in the recruiting part of Boeing, and we would have hundreds of resumes come into job recs. And my job was to, as a human, go through and sort through hundreds of jobs, looking at what the hiring manager wanted, and only send them the top 10 or so. And this was an antiquated inside homegrown tool that was nightmarish in its level of technology. And then it required dozens of people to manage it. So that was interesting. I read some of the most crazy resumes you've ever seen. One was this guy who said, hey, I've been using flight simulators so I could be a test pilot. That was my favorite. I was like, wow.
Love that guy.
Cool. It's very brave and bold. And let me just say, those of us in the office were like, oh, wow. I don't know, man.
Wait, but Beth, when you got the job, were you excited about it? Was this were you doing something else before, and this was the first time that you got a job like this for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had done a couple of very short-term contracts right before that contract role with Boeing. That was actually the transition from higher education into the corporate world for me. So I kind of leveraged all of my skills from organizing and planning and working with people. And then I turned it into a resume review guru kind of space and team leads, helping others get better at their numbers and delivering just those right resumes to our client managers. So yeah, that was my first taste of corporate life, if you will.
Very interesting.
Yes.
What was the hardest roles to review? Like the hardest profiles to review?
It wasn't that the roles were difficult to review. It's more like the relationships with the different hiring managers and their personalities, because that was like actually my first remote role, actually. I was in a separate location. I wasn't on site with the client. So I was communicating through email and telephone. And
This is 2015, right?
this is 2005.
2005. So you were remote
Yeah.
in 2005.
Now, I was in person in our office for our recruiting agency, but I wasn't on site. So I was pseudo remote. Yeah. And the most difficult thing was I also had responsibility for the engineering jobs and a certain alphabet of the hiring managers. I also had the truck drivers. So what was interesting is I was discovering that there were different hiring managers who had built their own local processes and their own way of doing things. And all they were using was the pass through of the resumes through the system. And they had their whole other process outside. So it was very interesting when I discovered that no one told me, oh yeah, the folks that are doing the transportation jobs, they're not going to work with you. You're just passing resumes to them and making sure it's meeting the minimums. And they have their own, they have to do driving tests and all this other stuff. I'm like, got it, pass them on. Yeah, it's very interesting. And I also discovered that apparently this tool was so broken that different engineering disciplines were also managing their own human part of it because the system was broken and the keywords were horrible. The keyword algorithms didn't work very well. And so you'd end up getting the strangest things passing through. So it was definitely not good technology. So I've experienced what bad technology can do and how much extra effort and overhead can be involved in it just to get the right people to the right job at the right time.
What was the last role you had at Boeing?
The last role I had was on the 787-10 development program. And that was the very first plane that was built outside of the Puget Sound in Charleston. And it was the second 787. And so this was the development organization. I was part of business operations. And I had the business operations employee development piece of the pie where we would describe how we were leveling up our operations folks and doing some of those kind of employee development pieces. And the interesting part about that role, I knew it was going to be the sunset because if you live like 50 miles or fewer to a plant, they can move you wherever they want to in the Puget Sound. So I was going from the southern part of the Puget Sound, catching a van pool and going all the way up to the north part of Puget Sound, leaving my house at 4:30 in the morning to be at work by 7:05. Well,
Wow.
in person. Yikes, in person. Now, the cool part was the plant in Everett is like the biggest manufacturing building by volume, and you could put multiple Disney Worlds inside it. It's that big. Cool. I got to see where they were building like the 777, the 787 before they sent it to South Carolina for finishing. And I got to see some of the biggest homes where they would start making the different parts of the fuselage and baking it. So amazing technology. So that was my last role, but the best role that I had, the coolest role that I had, I was in our learning and development organization, and we were helping Washington State take basic airframe mechanic skills training and getting it out into community colleges and high schools. So the coolest thing that I did is I got all of the technical high school directors from around the state. We got in a room. I had my engineering airframe mechanic technical SMEs with me, and we figured out how to do a pilot to teach the basic skills to high school students so that the entire aerospace industry in Washington could level up their skills, and Boeing wouldn't teach shop math to new hires. That a lot of these things are related to it, that they could get like some pre-skilled folks into Boeing before. It's very expensive to teach that from a corporate perspective. So super cool. And then I left that role, and 3 years later, there were articles in the Seattle Times that program was thriving and getting
That's
students into
awesome.
a neat career. So yeah,
Cool.
super fun.
Is it still going, that program?
It is.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's cool to plant a seed and see that it lives somewhere.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm a little jealous. The scale of those plants, I'm sure.
Crazy.
Right?
Yes.
If they felt, yeah, you said it was like a 3-hour commute or something, but it sounds like you were getting up and you were going on a mission every day.
It felt like it. Yes. And Starbucks is my best buddy because you had to have caffeine getting up that early. So.
Okay. If Starbucks, if you're listening, we will take free coffee for mentions.
They're from Seattle too, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah. Now there's a whole thing because the new CEO is like remote.
I know. It's
You read about
kind of
this?
wild. Oh, yes. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
That's very cool. What about the future, Beth? What do you think about the future? Like not from a product standpoint or from a change management or business standpoint, just in general, what do you think about the future?
I think about it all the time, actually, because I'm a stepmom. And so I have some kids in my life that I really care about. And I think about all of the things they're going to experience and how the world's a little different than when I was a kid. And that's true for every generation. But when I think about the future, I think ultimately I'm optimistic. I think there's interesting things going on. I think if we continue to use our humanness and our heart and our mind together and really tap into our creativity and be kind to one another and act with empathy, then I really feel like we're going to get through anything. It may be challenging. I don't foresee that life's always going to be super easy. There's probably some things that are going to disrupt us and always come at us and we can't predict. But ultimately, if we tie our humanness to our heart and our mind and service to others, then there's going to be interesting technologies to explore, ways to help other people. And I guess ultimately I am optimistic, but I always have that little bit of, oh dear, what if? But then my optimism brings me back because every time a challenge is presented, I think we as humans step up to that. I'm actually curious about the future. See, none of us have this way of being told what's going to come next. So it's like reading a book that you get to the next chapter and there's a cliffhanger. Like, oh, that was interesting. Now what? So, and it's like it's a long story, and I love just seeing where it takes us. And I don't know, I just have a sense of adventure and curiosity.
Cool. We have a lot of things in common, Beth.
We do. Optimism being definitely one of them, and hope for a good future. So I think that's a good way of looking at the world.
A treat for our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. And for those folks who already know you to get an opportunity to listen to you a little bit more. And I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope you come back very soon. All right, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That wraps up our conversation with Beth Hedger. We hope you found her insights on product maturity, innovation, and leadership as inspiring as we did.
If you're interested in learning more, don't miss Beth's upcoming webinar series, where she'll educate you on developing product organizations like products themselves. You can find the details on our website and social channels.
As always, thank you for tuning in to Looking Forward. Don't forget to follow, leave a review, and stay curious.
Shout out to our team at Ampersand Consulting for unlocking product team's maximum potential.
I'm Alejandro Jagerman.
And I'm Jen Robinson.
And remember, keep
Keep
looking
looking
forward.
forward.